This is a video for our friends who don't speak Italian but can understand English. It is the second episode of a series which is called A Catholic Perspective on Nature. I want to repeat briefly some key concepts which we introduced in the first episode, which you can find here on my YouTube channel. First, science. What is science? From an Aristotelian Thomistic point of view, science is the cognitio certa rerum per causas, and the object of a science is not necessarily empirical. For example, theology and mathematics are sciences, but they do not have an empirical object of reference. Second, in the first episode, we presented the philosophical conflict between realism and idealism. Realism is the philosophy which states that the object imposes itself on the subject. Idealism is the philosophy which states that the object is the projection of the subject, is the projection of our mind. For example, today, even male and female are seen as a projection of society, of social convention of our mind, and so on. So a philosophical approach to reality can also have moral consequences. And from an Aristotelian Thomistic point of view, we should always accept realism, not idealism. Third, physics and metaphysics. Some realities are irreducible to formulas or matter. For example, the beauty of a mountain, the sweetness of a melody, the problem of the existence of God, of the soul, and so on. So it is not true that matter and material entities are the sole realities existing in the universe. And last point, there are two philosophical approaches to the scientific investigation of nature. I call them the absolutistic approach and the open approach. The absolutistic approach states that only what is measurable and observable does exist. So material entities and not transmaterial entities, so to say. The open approach accepts the idea that there can be something which goes beyond the universe. And it is a scientific perspective on nature. So let's start with the questions of this second episode. Should a good Christian be a scientist or love science? Certainly not. Science is not necessary for our salvation to save our soul. However, science can be a useful instrument. The good science points in fact towards God, biology, cosmology, and so on. The universe is the beautiful work of God. We can find in it the traces of its wisdom. See, for example, St. Paul in the Epistle to the Romans 1:20, this very famous epistle. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. So they are without excuse. Without excuse are the men who are not able to go from our universe to God. So we can start from our reality, because our reality, our existence is in the material universe, but with our reason, observing the universe, observing nature, and so on, we can go beyond the universe. From this point of view, a good philosophy is always needed. Of course, science is not the ultimate aim of Christian life. Our Lord says, see Luke 9:25, what good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? Saying that God has the first place in our life doesn't mean absolutely that we are against science. We are only looking for the correct hierarchy order in our existence. How do we arrive at topics that invite us scientifically to overcome the empirical dimension and talk about an intelligence transcending it? Well, from our common experience, as for example, the philosopher of science Stephen Meyer explains, we know that wherever information is found, software, in a book, radio signal, or even in a clock which we find on a mountain, its generating cause is not the inert matter, the pure matter, but intelligence. Talking about an intelligence behind the cosmos is thus not a fideistic, but a rational conclusion based on the application of the principle of causality and of the adequate proportional causality, because the cause has always to be at least proportional, if not better, than this effect. Matter follows constant, universal, and precise laws, which regulate an almost unlimited plurality of phenomena and make the overall coordination of this great cosmic unity uniform and coherent. Now, chance has no memory. If everything proceeded only randomly, we wouldn't have an ordered universe, but a chaotic one. If causality and uniformity were absent, we wouldn't have science. We would have to renounce any scientific knowledge. We can do science because the universe is something ordered, coherent, uniform. In a perfectly randomly entity, we wouldn't have science. We couldn't make provisions and so on. Starting from its beginning, our universe was formed step by step, following precise laws. The cosmos is then based on very fine-tuned physical constants. Should one of them be modified, then the entire system would collapse. The universe, its beginning and its order, need an adequate cause. Here we have to remember the cosmological argument, or the Kalam argument as it is called today. First, everything that has a beginning has a cause. Second, the universe had a beginning. And third conclusion, the universe had a cause. It is very simple. Of course, the theory of the intelligent design is not proven with mathematical, but rather with rational certainty, because either certainty can be of different orders. So we don't have a mathematical certainty, but a rational one. So cosmology has a very great importance in guiding our mind towards God. Cosmology addresses the question that philosophers have been discussing since always. And the question is this: did the universe have an absolute beginning, or has it existed since eternity, although perhaps in different forms or states? That is, do we believe that matter is self-sufficient or not? The question is fundamental for our approach to world and life. If we answer yes, we conceive the world as an absolutely autonomous machine, and God is unnecessary. Everything, even life, is the product of a blind, unguided random process. If we answer no, we agree that universe and life are not autonomous. They possess a cause to which they are related. Genesis begins by proclaiming the contingency of the universe. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. These words denote an absolute and intrinsic dependence of the Word on God. Matter was created ex nihilo, and the universe didn't come out from an eternal pre-existing matter, as it is, for example, in Plato, in Anaxagoras, and so on. The creation of matter is then followed by God's shaping of the world. So we have two passages. First of all, the creation of matter ex nihilo. And then, second one, God's shaping of the world. In the antiquity, in the antique philosophers, for example, we don't have the creation of matter ex nihilo. The concept of ex nihilo, of creation of ex nihilo, is a Christian one. Today's physical cosmology provides the outlines of all this using its own language. Natural science does not talk about creation because it is not a concept of scientific, of the empirical science, the one of creation, which is the prerogative of metaphysics and theology. What does Catholic philosophy say about the ascending path from the Word to God? Well, there are two different ways to prove God's existence, as explained by St. Thomas Aquinas. The first way is called propter quid, from the cause to its effect. This is the a priori argument of St. Anselm of Aosta. What does Anselm say? God is the greatest ens. The greatest ens does possess all perfections. If not, it wouldn't be the greatest ens. It is in fact far more perfect to exist in the concrete reality than only in our mind as an idea. So, since existence is a perfection, God has to exist if it is really the greatest ends existing. Aquinas criticized this argument because it moves unduly from the logical to the ontological level. But there is the second way to go from here to God, to prove God's existence, and it is called the way quia. So the first one is propter quid, the second one is quia, from the effect to its cause, which is far more traditional, of course, in the history of Christian theology. This is the traditional way within Catholic philosophy. I can prove God's existence using my reason moving from this world, its perfection, harmony, order, and so on. This is also repeated within the anti-modernist oath from Pope Pius X, which was abolished after the Vatican II. And what does the anti-modernist oath says in the first article? And first of all, I profess that God, the origin and end of all things, can be known with certainty by the natural light of reason from the created world, that is, from the visible works of creation, as a cause from its effects, and that therefore his existence can also be demonstrated. So we can prove God's existence using our reason, starting from this world and going beyond this world. So faith is not fideism. Our reason is called upon to demonstrate the preambula fidei, which are the set of natural truths that serve as presuppositions to faith and which are knowable by reason. An example of the importance of this preambula fidei. It is very hard to believe that God is one and triune if you are not even convinced that God exists. So, first of all, the acceptation of the preambula fidei, and then the argument of faith do come. There is no contradiction between faith and reason, although the truths of faith do exceed the powers of reason. And this is, of course, it is so, because the truths of our faith do come from the revelation, so are revealed to us by God, and they go beyond the powers of reasons, beyond the limits of reason. In 1933, Georges Lemaitre stated during an interview, "The doctrine of the Trinity is much more abstruse than anything in relativity or quantum mechanics. But being necessary to salvation, the doctrine is stated in the Bible. If the theory of relativity had been necessary to salvation, it would have been revealed to St. Paul or Moses. Anyway, God cannot be expected to be the subject of experimental verification. Here is Isaiah's Deus absconditus. God has immeasurable wisdom, inscrutable will. To claim that for our faith we should find empirical traces of God in the world using technical instruments would be like denying the transubstantiation, because with the microscope the holy bread does always present the same appearance as before. It would be stupid to deny the existence of God using technical instruments, because we cannot prove God empirically. But this doesn't mean that we cannot have a scientific knowledge of God within certain limits, within great limits, of course. Nor can reason exhaust God. We should always remember that we can know God, but not comprehend him. There is a very distinction between comprehension and knowledge. In a conference held in 1936, Lemaitre, the father of modern cosmology, highlights how God remains hidden in his actions. Everything that has been done, says Lemaitre, has been done by God, but nowhere has God substituted himself for his creator. Divine activity is everywhere essentially hidden. One will never give the possibility of reducing God to a scientific hypothesis. But a believing scientist does always know that the Enigma universe possesses a solution. This is a great advantage over the atheistic scientist. So the believing scientist does know that the universe has a solution. That's the problem of the universe as a solution. Maybe he will never understand it completely. But the universe does come from a rational mind, from our creator, which is a rational hence. So rationality can be seen everywhere in the universe.